Welcome to Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast. This is Bruce Hutchin, host and executive producer. Each week you will hear tips, techniques, strategies, and personal stories from some of the best and funniest whitetail hunters in North America. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you do, tell a friend on social media. If not, tell me and I'll make it better. Thanks for listening, folks. Whitetail Rendezvous, episode number 417. We're heading out to Virginia today, and we're going to connect with Chase Bowman. Now, Chase has a TV company called Bound for Blood, and he and his brother started that a number of years ago. They kind of get away from it for a while now, and they're bringing it back big time. And one thing about Chase that I love is that he talks about the parts of hunting that some people just they gloss over, and that's reading sign and terrain. The biggest thing Chase does, anybody else that I've had on the show, he talks about hunting outside the box. So sit back, relax, and listen to Chase Bowman bringing thinking outside the box. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, and I'm excited to have Chase Bowman on the show, and he's involved and started a few years back, actually 2015. Bound for Blood TV, and you can find him on social media, and he'll tell you later in the show how to get a hold of him. But Chase is come back on the show. He was here really early on in the first 100 guests I've had. We're over 400 guests now. So Chase, welcome to the show, and glad to have you back, man.
Thanks, buddy. Glad to be back. I enjoy it.
So let's catch everybody up. What's happened to Bound for Blood, what the future holds, that which you can share about. But let's just talk about your TV program and where you want to take that in the years ahead.
Well, as you and I were talking before here, I took a break, as I told you last time I was on. Just kind of fell into the norm of everything, and didn't really like it. So decided to kind of just step back and try and breathe some new life into the show. And I'm going to be coming back. Not really sure if it's going to be this year, but most likely it'll be spring of next year. Probably we'll go back with the Hunt channel just because I like those guys. But not really telling a whole lot about the way I'm going to come back with it. The show is going to be done a little bit different than anything anybody else is doing right now. So just trying not to let the cat out of the bag, but definitely going to be very exciting and very different. It's going to be me and one guy from Pennsylvania. We're going to be doing it together, and it's just going to be interesting. I think it'll be something a lot of people will like to watch. It will be me hunting the South, him hunting the North, and of course, I travel west a whole lot, and he travels some, so there are a lot of different kinds of animals killed, and different terrain and things like that people will get to see. But the format, I'm not really talking about that a whole lot right now. I want to keep it a secret.
All right. Well, that's a good catch up on that. And today, what are the three things that you want to make sure that we get out and you can share, whitetail hunting tips with our listeners?
I guess the biggest tips would be, thinking outside of the box, pushing the envelope to do things that a lot of people wouldn't dare do, and really, reading sign and terrain. I think a lot of people don't have any interpretation or misinterpret a lot of that. I think it's a big key that a lot of people miss.
So let's just start right off with reading sign and terrain. We're going to, go through and talk about all those areas and share some stories along the way. But let's start right off with reading sign and terrain.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll start off with the easiest sign to find, and that would be buck rubs. In my opinion, you agree with that, Bruce?
That they stand out because you can just look down and all of a sudden you see a fresh rub and it's shining. I mean, it's a marker.
Correct. Yeah. Now I'm speaking more of East Coast hunting. I will clear that up first of all. It may not make sense to a lot of the guys hunting the West. East Coast deer or higher pressure deer. There's just a tremendous amount of pressure. And if you go back and look at Pope and Young entries and Boone and Crockett entries in the last 10, 20 years compared to license sold in the East, you'll see that we just don't kill the amounts of big deer. And I know there's a lot killed that aren't put in the books, but it's really the only indicator that you've got to go by. Out in the West, talking Kansas, places like that, the Pope and Young, your chances really of killing a Pope and Young by license sales versus book bucks is like, 1 in 200. So I'm talking more of the pressured deer, back east. People will walk into a block of woods and they'll see a big rub line, just as shiny as can be. And that's where they want to set up there and hunt. And, the thing is, those big rubs they will get your blood pumping, but in my opinion, that is not where you're going to kill a big deer, because 90% of those, as a lot of people know, are made at night. You hardly ever go out hunting and in walks this buck and he just starts trashing this tree. Very, very seldom. So I think that's one big sign feature that people overread, in my opinion, because they see that and it just sticks out like a sore thumb, and you just kind of gravitate to that. And it's hard to walk away from a big rub line. It is for me, even, I've done it for years, but I see a big rub line, and there's still part of me that wants to hunt that. So on the rub lines, my advice is that deer is coming from somewhere to make that rub line. So instead of trying to hunt the rub line, you need to hunt it, where he's entering, coming out of that bedding area and going to that rub line, rather than just setting blindly on that rub line, because it's not something he's gonna hit during daytime hours 9 times out of 10. Another, scrapes are the same way to me. You just don't see big deer coming into scrapes at daylight. It's just not something that they do much here, in the east with high pressure deer. But you can use those signs, those two things, to put you on a big deer during daylight hours, but you're going to have to really do your homework and figure out where he's bedding. And the best way to find out where he's bedding will be to go in, January, February, after the season's out, and you're not worried about busting those deer by being in there for a couple of days looking around, and find his shed. Usually, if you can find a big deer shed, that's where he beds. Not, most of the time, you get in a thick area and you're finding sheds. That's because the deer are spending a whole lot of time in there.
Yeah, when you think about rub lines, and either they're coming from someplace or going to someplace. And one thing that I found is that read the rub line, and they'll tell you, where they're coming from, east to west or north to south, whatever. So many people just look at the rub line and they don't read it. And we're talking about reading sign.
Right.
And when you read it, you can tell, okay, he's coming up because he's scraping on the south side of that tree, or the east, west, or north. And you can get so much information about it, about that deer and its habits. And I like what you said, don't set the rib line, figure out where he's either going to, feeding area, water, or his day bed, or he's coming out of his core area, and it is heading someplace, because they're moving someplace. And that's the thing that people don't think about, is those bucks are going specifically to some place, and you just have to interpret the sign and set up your stand or ground blind or whatever, and intercept him along that route. Your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I agree 100%. I mean, that's exactly what I'm getting at. And I find it a whole lot in the younger hunters, because they haven't been hunting that long, and it's kind of like walking out Christmas morning. You see all those presents under the tree, and that's right where you want to go. You may walk by a pile of presents laid in the corner, because you're headed to the ones that are under that big flashy tree. And maybe they're not the best presents. So yeah, I think that you should always, there's always a bigger piece of that puzzle. Rubs and scrapes are a very, very small piece. I won't hunt them. Field edge scrapes are useless. Field edge rubs are useless. If you're hunting them, you're hunting a deer that's not going to show during daylight, except for the rut, of course, when, all bets are off during the rut. But, overall, the rut's only a week or two of the whole season. So there's a whole lot to learn there.
What about community scrapes? Where trails are intersecting, and I've seen some huge community scrapes. And your thoughts on hunting them?
My thoughts are the same with those. Even more, I will shy away from a community scrape quicker than anything because I don't want to hunt an area where there's a lot of deer. I want to hunt the area where there's one big deer. I want to hunt a stand where I may set for 3 days and not see anything but one deer, and that's the big deer I'm hunting. If you're hunting an area with a lot of deer, you're way more apt to get busted, as you know. So if you're hunting community scrape and every doe and little buck is coming through there, it's hard to stay hidden, all the time. They do tend community scrapes. You will see some daylight activity of them because the young bucks are on their feet during the day more so than the older bucks. But I think to kill, a mature old deer that there is really just no scrape that will work that well. Now it might, sometimes. I'm not going to say that no big buck has ever been killed off of scrapes because clearly they have, but I think you really have a better chance of following it back and hunting him where he's fed if you can get in there quiet enough and really pay attention to what you're doing.
Now, a lot of people write and a lot of people chit chat about, bedding areas, and you really don't want to bust them out of there. And, don't set up your stand more than, 100 yards of the bedding area and so forth. What's your thoughts on that? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, my thoughts on that are, really taboo to what a lot of people say. And a lot of that comes from I don't have the time that the average guy has to hunt. I'm, way obsessed with deer hunting, but my work takes me out of town 4 days a week. So I only get to hunt, at max 3 days a week. So I'm not going to sit back on a deer and worry about pushing him out. Really, I don't have time to do that. So I'll go in. Now I'll plot a route usually by maps or just knowledge of the terrain. Usually I've been in there my whole life on most of the places I hunt, so I know how to get in. And you got to get in early. You can't go in there 30 minutes before daylight and set up in a bedding area. You're going to have to be there at least an hour before daylight up in the tree. So yes and no on that one, Bruce. If I couldn't make it in there way before daylight, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't be close, but I always dedicate myself to get into those places. Now, I wouldn't hunt a bedding area during the evening because you're not going to get in there. He's already going to be bedded. So it's a fine line. I would hunt, downwind or not downwind, but I would hunt to where my wind is going to carry to that bedding area in the evening. I would snug up as close as I could, and the ideal place would be a saddle where you can get your wind kind of carrying down. When he comes out, he'll come out and then he'll try and quarter into that wind to go over that saddle. So you got that one little saving grace there when he breaks his wind direction to go over that saddle. If you're set up in that saddle, a lot of times he won't smell you and you can kill him. Nothing's 100%, but that's just the way that I do it.
Now, do you use hang-ons or ground blinds, or what type of setup do you have?
I'm 100% hang on. I carry them in normally in the morning. I'll set them up in the dark. I use like a very, very dull red light. I use like the foam dresser drawer, the foam stuff you put in the bottom of dresser drawers. I'll use that, wrap all my gear in it so nothing rattles, stands, climbing sticks. And I'll go there that morning, and, I found that I can get a hang on in the tree now and, just as quick and quieter than I can with a climbing stand, and that just comes from a lot of time of practicing and doing it. But just not a big fan of the climbing stands. To me, they're pretty noisy, and you got to find the perfect tree, and it's hard to do that in the dark.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think of I don't hunt hang-ons anymore, so I hunt from stands that I set up. But having said that, there's a lot of stuff happening, even with climbing sticks, getting it up there and setting it in and, tying it in and then get yourself up there and strapped in and then get your bow up. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. How long does that take you? Is that a 15-minute, 20-minute job or?
Yeah. Once I reach the tree, I can have a stand up in it, secured and be in that tree probably within 20 minutes on most days. If I get that stand up and everything goes smooth, in less than 20 minutes I'll have it up. And one thing that I do is even if it's blistering cold that morning, I don't wear anything but a t-shirt or a thin long sleeve shirt, and You know, if it's really cold and I'm wearing thermals, I put my coveralls in my backpack, my coat, so I've got nothing hindering me, nothing hanging up, and nothing making me sweat, so I can work pretty swift.
That's kind of interesting. I think of some of the cold mornings and the places I've hunted whitetails, and I'm going, I don't know if I could do that. You wear gloves, right?
Yeah, I wear gloves, thin gloves, but you're talking East, Bruce. It's not like the cold in Wisconsin here. To us, a cold morning, in November is still above zero. You're talking 20 to 30 degrees is pretty cold here. So it's not like Wisconsin and Colorado cold. It's, you don't get into the negatives.
Yeah, that's for sure. Let's talk about thinking outside the box. We've already shared a couple of things about hunting near the bedding area, going in, an hour before dark 30, red light, red headlamp, setting up your stand. Because what you're doing is you're waiting for that buck to come into the bedding area. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
So what else? Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, I'm trying to hunt him coming in, not leaving. You're exactly right on that.
So, what are some of the other thinking outside the box? Because everybody, we all have habits. Some are good habits because that stands produced, and if you just do the same thing, you're going to shoot a buck. Now, I'm not talking about mature bucks because they're a whole different ball game. But let's just talk about thinking outside the box to get yourself set up so you can take a nice mature deer, 2.5, 3.5 year old deer, not Mr. Wonderful, but a very good representative trophy, maybe 125 or better, Pope and Young.
Yeah. Well, of course, a whole lot of what I just told you is pretty out of the box. I don't know many people that hunt that way. Another thing that I have done in the past is if I couldn't locate exactly where a buck was bedding, but I had a good idea, or there wasn't, I couldn't find the right place to set up or whatever. I didn't, and I'm talking like large tracts of cut over, and you're trying to get in range of that deer and figure out what he's doing. I have went in and late in the evening, an hour before dark or so, or getting close to dark, slipped through that bedding area and got the deer to jump. And when you do that, you just try and see where he got up and which way he goes. And if you do it late in the evening, that deer will normally go on about his normal feeding route, and then you set up on him. You get in there early that morning. When he comes back in there to bed, you've got him. And I've had that work. It was actually the first time I ever heard of it was from, I can't remember the fellow's name, but he invented long wolf tree stands, and that's how he hunted a lot of his deer. And I started trying it, and people at first, told me, "You're crazy, you're going to blow that deer out," but you're really not, because to him that bed worked because he got out without getting killed, so he's going to return there. And I've had that work numerous of times. That's one of my favorite ways to hunt a big deer. And another thing I think I shared with you this last time was I was hunting a big 8 pointer. He was 160 class deer, maybe 170s as 8, and that's just unreal for where we live. But they started getting trail camera pictures of him in certain places, and it's like he just kept, he'd be on one farm, 1 month, and then he'd move, and then he'd move, and I figured out what he was doing was he was moving around the river, and I realized where I had a pretty good idea where he was going to be when it come time for rut and where most of those would be. And I actually hung a stand 60 yards from that deer. Whenever I heard that deer and his does wake up that morning, and they were 60 yards from me, and I carried that stand in that morning and hung it. So yeah, that's out of the box. A lot of I bow hunt off the ground a whole lot. We're used to now. It's crossbow because of my eyesight, but and that'll get you in some places that normally you couldn't see, do a low canopy or something. You can't see it from a tree stand. But there's a lot of different things like that. It would take me forever to really dig down into it. But, most people are too scared. They think they're going to bump a deer completely out of where he is, and they tend to back off a whole lot. And, I don't. If I know where a deer's at, I'm going to go in for him because, he may not be there tomorrow, whether I push him or not. All he's got to do is take a doe, and get on her, and somebody might kill him, or he may go to a completely different area searching does if you don't have a whole lot of does. So if you know where he's at, you got to go in and kill him. Not so much of a lot of people like to hunt them from a distance, and I'm just not like that. I like to get in there and get rough with them.
Yeah, up close and personal. I guess that's a good way to say your technique. And when you pay attention to detail, you said you hunt with a crossbow now. Um, how is that different than a compound? Pluses and minuses. Let's talk about hunting with a crossbow.
Well, naturally the plus of a crossbow is the sheer accuracy of it. Uh, I can at 100 yards my crossbow. I've got a Scorpion Ventilator Extreme, and at 100 yards, you're shooting a baseball sized group. You also have scope and crosshairs, which we all know is a big advantage. Disadvantages are they're heavy to carry. They're very very awkward. Hard to shoot out of a tree. I'm not a fan of a crossbow, but I do hunt with one because as I said, when it gets close to dark, I cannot see through my sights. If I'm shooting a bow, I cannot see through that peep. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be we're talking the last hour dark and light starts fading, and that's due to an accident I had at work several years ago. And it's just got worse and worse over the year. To the guys that kill big bucks with bows, they're in my opinion, and I'm not knocking anybody. I think it's to each their own, but to those guys that are really killing massive deer with bows, that's your true good hunters, because as we both know, it's hard to get that big buck in bow range. It's not as hard to get him at 100 yards with a crossbow. And I've not shot one at 100 yards. We did take one with it last year at 87 yards with ease. So I'm a bow hunter at heart, and I still, I just bought the brand new Halon 32 and love shooting it, but I just can't see when I need to be able to see it. I just can't see. But that scope helps a whole lot. It gathers a lot of light.
What type of broadheads do you use?
I use a little bit of everything, Bruce. I use some expandables. Rages. I use Montex. I use dirt naps. Whatever I got laying around is what's going on. And I found most of the broadheads today shoot about the same. There's not a whole lot of different. I've had them all work. I've had them all fail. And, well, usually it's not the broadhead; it's the shooter. A lot of times people shoot high on a deer and say the broadhead didn't open, and generally it's the shot, not the broadhead. I mean, a well placed field point would kill any deer that ever moved. You know that. But pretty much anything. I'm more favored, I guess, to cut on contact broadhead because I shoot a lot of hogs and stuff, and I did have a broadhead break off in a hog's jaw one time, an expandable. The broadhead just wasn't quite tough enough to go the rest of the way through, and so I had to track with kind of a faint blood trail.
Yeah, I use G5 Montex. That's what I've used for years, and they
Yeah,
work. And
they're a sweet head, yes sir.
they work. And I'm kind of, when something works, then I just stick with it. And there are, hundreds of great broadheads out there. So, each his own. Say, Chase, if somebody wants to get a hold of you on social media, what's the best way to do that?
You can go to my personal Facebook page, which is Chase Bowman. Or you can go to the Bound for Blood page. It's still up, still going. We haven't taken any of that down. The only thing we took a break from really was just the TV part of things for right now.
Where do you think the whole TV thing's going? Because there's so many people, they're on YouTube and Vimeo, and you got Instagram. You can put up, videos on. Where's the whole thing going in your estimation?
Well, I think TV will always be around as far as the regular televised stuff on you, but it does seem to me that the industry is going more of towards the internet with the YouTube and and things like that. I mean, 15 years ago, you and I wouldn't be sitting here doing a podcast. So I
10
do
years
think
ago.
it is. Yeah, true. So yeah, I do think that it is leaning a whole lot towards more of the digital era with YouTube, and and it's so much easier to do. It's free to do, and a guy can put things on YouTube without even having sponsorship because he doesn't have to pay anything really.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and the camera gear is just unbelievable. Right? And I've talked to a number of people that have been in the video part of it for a long time, and what they used to have to pay versus what anybody, you and I could go out and we could have some studio ready, film, um, just with some. It's not simple gear, but very it's a heck of a lot cheaper, but less expensive. I think that's the right word to say
Yeah,
than it
yeah.
was in the past.
Right. I mean, now you got handheld cameras that are, as you were saying, you can go to Walmart and get a $300 camera that has video quality that is better than the studio cameras of yesteryear. So yeah, I mean, it's getting to where anybody can do it, and there is a lot of people doing it, and I think overall it's a lot of people say a lot of hunters talk about Facebook and things like that, and how it's hurt the industry and all, and because it's hard to get sponsorships. And I've been guilty of, the same thing when you're trying to get sponsors and you can't. And you're like, well, it's because, all these other guys doing it. But I think, in my opinion, that social media has helped the deer quality overall, because you got guys now that are holding out for big deer, mainly, let's be honest, it's, because they want a picture on themselves on Facebook of them holding a big deer. So I think it's, as far as your age quality, I think it's actually been a big help for that, in my opinion.
That's an interesting thought. The testosterone drive, call it what you want, and to me, I've always gone along with Brenda Valentine told me a long time ago. Said it's your hunt, it's your deer. It doesn't matter what you take. You paid the money, you've spent the time, and enjoy your trophy. And so many times, and we can get into this a little bit. A guy will put up a simple spike buck or a forky, and I'm not talking about a youth, but I'm talking about a hunter saying, "Hey, look at my deer," and he's happier than heck as his first archery kill. And
Yeah,
yet some people go, "Why'd you kill that small deer?" Blah blah blah. You know the
right.
drills. What do
Oh
you
yeah.
think about all that?
I think that's very very uncalled for. I'm the kind of person, and I've videoed myself shooting spike, Bruce, because that was the deer that I was happy with it, and as long as I'm happy with it, now of course at this point in my life. It normally it takes a bigger if I see a smaller deer, I'm not going to shoot him, because I'm just not, that animal doesn't excite me. There's no part of me that says take that animal's life, so I'm not going to. But if somebody harvests an animal and they're happy with it, it's nobody else's right to throw down on it. And as I just said, I've videoed myself shooting a spike, just because I was tickled to death with that deer. It's the first time I'd ever been in this place. My brother was filming me, and we were hunting this big nasty thicket and carried our tree stands in. We had one day to hunt it, and I was bow hunting then, and I was just happy that I was able to get in there in that area and take a deer. And so yeah, I think there's two sides to every coin. Like I just said, I think a lot of people are holding off on deer, but then you've got, like you were just saying, people dogging other people, and I think a whole lot of times it's jealousy. Maybe that guy hasn't gotten a deer all year, so he's going to throw off on this guy to make himself feel better. But you're going to have that either way. It's very uncalled for, though, in my opinion, and I know you feel the same way as well.
Pretty much. Say, we're coming up the last few minutes of the show. So, what's your three best tips you could give to any bow hunter? Somebody comes up and asks you, "Hey, Chase, what about X, Y, and Z?" So, what are your three things that you'd want to tell somebody that come up and ask you a couple of questions about whitetail hunting?
If somebody came and asked me that, my first thing, the first tip I can give anybody is to make sure that you always enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it anymore and you're doing it just to do it, you need to get out, or change something. Get back to the point. If you're just hunting big deer and that's kind of just got old blend, you need to get back to where you're having fun with it. I guess the second tip that I could give anyone would be to introduce someone else to it. And then and that goes right back to having fun, because if you're hunting with a group, a lot of times you have more fun. And probably my third thing would be just always do your thing. Don't do something that just because everybody else is doing it. If you feel that if small deer makes you happy, then fine, kill all the small deer you want. If big deer make you happy, then do that. I'm really to each his own person in a big way, and that would be my tips rather than saying, oh, this is how you hunt deer, because my way is probably a whole lot different than what anybody else will be. But my tip would be my main tip would be to make sure that you're always having fun with it, and those big bucks will come because you'll keep doing it. And the longer you hunt, you may not ever kill one but one time because of luck, but it takes a whole lot of luck. So that would be my main tip, is just to keep it fun.
Hey, we're at the time of the show now that you can give some shout outs to family, friends, sponsors, whomever you want, and then we're going to wrap the show.
All right. Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to you, Bruce. I appreciate you having me on again, man. I've always enjoyed coming on here and talking to you. I'd like to give a big shout out to Treason. Always like those guys over there. I see they've got a new pattern out now, so I think that's pretty cool. Can't wait to see it and use it. And I'd like to give a shout out to my brothers. Pretty much taught me everything I ever knew about hunting big deer, and always been there to help me out. So.
Well, thanks, Chase Bowman. And, I just wish you, fame and fortune, as they say, with Bound for Blood. And I can't wait to have you, down the road. We'll get you back on the show, and, we'll talk about what you're doing and how you're, changing it up. And like you said, thinking outside the box. So, sir, thank you so much for being a guest on Whitetail Rendezvous.
Thank you, Bruce. Appreciate it.
On our next show, we're heading out to the Dakotas. I'm going to connect with Nick and Casey Dietz. Now, they're from the Fargo area, and they hunt about 100 miles northwest of their home there in Fargo, where they both work. And the thing that makes them unique is that Kelsey's dad is still farming the same farm. They've been for a long, long time, and that's where they whitetail hunt. And having said that, they talk about how hard it is to hunt the rolling hills of the Dakotas. There's not a lot of cottonwoods. There's not a lot of windbreaks. There's not a lot of anything where they're from. And so when they want to put out trail cameras, they put in a fence post. Yes, that's how they do it. And then they strap a camera to it. So it's going to be an interesting show. You're going to hear a lot about a hunting duo, Nick and Kelsey Dietz.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.